Candidate Evan McMullen is joining me now. He, of course, is a former CIA officer. Evan, it's been a while. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be with you, Kate.
So let's talk first about this Washington Post reporting. FBI monitoring Carter Page on his ties to Russia. On this, you had a lot to say.
Well, it's important to note that this FISA warrant, as reported by the Washington Post, says that the government believed that Carter Page was a knowing clandestine collaborator with a foreign power, that being Russia. That's a big, big deal. And that's sort of espionage language for spy. So what they're saying is that they believed Carter Page was a Russian spy, and the court agreed with them. So it wasn't just the Obama administration or even the intelligence law enforcement agencies. This was the executive branch and the judiciary agreeing that there was cause to believe that Carter Page was a Russian spy. And of course, he was affiliated with the Trump campaign. And I think when people say that he was an informal advisor, I want to push back a little bit about that. He was named by then candidate Trump as an advisor. But when you're named by the candidate as an advisor, that's more than just informal. Carter Page was a part of the Trump campaign, and that's a big deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. Our intelligence community has determined that Russia engaged in cyber attacks on the United States to interfere with our election. And several members of the Trump administration and campaign have questionable ties to Russia. There's good reason to believe that President Trump himself has substantial financial ties to Russia, only we don't know the details because he won't release his tax returns. None of this is normal. We're not even 2 months into the Trump administration, and FBI counterintelligence investigations and congressional inquiries have already been launched. Senior officials were caught lying to Congress. A national security advisor resigned in disgrace because he misled White House officials and the FBI about his Russian ties. And in the middle of all of this, Donald Trump incredibly continues to consider lifting sanctions against Russia.
We know that Russia meddled in the election. No one is disputing that.
Dr. Martin Luther King taught us that organized, passionate, nonviolent resistance is required in the quest for dignity and equal justice for everyone. So what would Dr. King expect us to do in the face of this partisanship, in this disregard of decency? I think Dr. King would want us to fight. And with regard to the Russian investigation, Bannon, Sessions, Flynn, Manafort, we are going to have to find out everything that happened in this relationship between the Trump campaign and the Russians, between the Trump transition team and the Russians, and after he was named the president. And the American people have a right to know everything.
My message is simply this, that no one is above the law, that our job in government and here in the Attorney General's office is to make sure that we uphold the rule of law, and we need to be prepared at all turns to take action as an office when and if someone acts in ways that are unlawful or unconstitutional. And whether it's the President of the United States or a federal agency acting in a way that's unlawful or acting in a way that's unconstitutional, we will be prepared to take action.
So basically, what is ReVote 2017? Well, first of all, we just need to understand that, in fact, our election was stolen, and it was stolen by the Russians and by Trump and by their Confederates. And this is something that has come to the attention of many people. Suffice it to say that our petition at the Supreme Court, being led by a citizens group, a grassroots organization, led predominantly by women with some very good men in the mix, this is our way of, getting an independent investigation. And we've discovered that the only path to do that is legally possible and morally mandated is through the Supreme Court. And the investigation is not for the investigation's sake itself. It is actually to understand and then to ask the court to declare this election unconstitutional so that we can have a revote, we can have a new election.
I don't think I really knew what I was getting into. But again, I feel passionate It's been exciting, I think was something you mentioned, and I feel grateful actually, given that the situation is so upsetting with the way the administration is getting launched, that I have a way to invest my energy that might make a difference.
There can be no serious dispute the Russians took our elections in 2016. Russia got practice at it in Ukraine and in the Netherlands. Wealthy Russian oligarchs and the Kremlin plotted to destroy our democracy as a way to reclaim oil interests they lost as a result of their own human rights violations and sanctions that we imposed upon them justifiably. What other incentives do the Russians have? Let's see. And Russia has a $500 billion oil deal that was negotiated, coincidentally, by our present Secretary of State.
The relationship is between WikiLeaks and the Trump administration.
Well, first off, for everyone who really thinks WikiLeaks is this, free-spirited, transparency organization, you can just put that to bed. They are a laundromat for Russian intelligence. They were the conduit for all of the stolen emails, and they were pretty open about it. Now, what's really funny about this is when I wrote this in my book, for the number of emails that were hacked, stolen, all the voicemails, everything for 10 months was stolen from the DNC, and then all these other things. I've done operations of a similar size. It would take 300 people working 24-hour shifts, three eight-hour watch shifts to analyze all that data, and then they were doing these precision data dumps. Trump would talk about Pennsylvania. Within 96 hours, every email about Pennsylvania that had ever been sent to the DNC was released.
So
this
wasn't
wasn't
one 400-pound guy in his bedroom?
No, it was 300 drunk-ass Russian guys in their bedroom. Actually working in an operations center, human intelligence officers, political warfare officers. A massive effort had to take place.
Why didn't the DNC make their computers a little more secure?
Well,
like
the DNC is a private entity like the RNC.
So the RNC was smart enough to take action.
No.
That's what I'm hearing about.
Bullshit. Let me explain something very, very clear. I worked at NSA.
Did you read that?
If we want to dedicate the resources to you, we will get into your system.
A legal argument that I saw a report of at the end of January, a writ of mandamus was filed before the Supreme Court to throw out the election. And the argument is using Article 4, Section 4, saying that this equates to an invasion. And I'm wondering what you think of that argument of a cyber territory being invaded is the same as land territory being invaded.
Yeah, that group wrote to me and asked me to sign on to that effort. And I think it's interesting, all right? But I didn't think, and I said this very clearly, I didn't think it had a snowball's chance in hell, all right? Because, the Founding Fathers, these are the times to go back and read books like The Debate of the Constitution. And, they are brilliant. Those guys were like the pinnacle of the Enlightenment. Everything they did holds up, right? And I can see them now. If you get George Mason and Thomas Jefferson and these guys, and you go, listen. In the future, copy. In the future, there's going to be this world that doesn't exist, right? And we're going to call it cyberspace. And you can see Franklin sitting there going, oh, you mean the ether? Yeah. Okay. It's a world of dreams that are connected through electricity. And they'd all be going, yeah, we copy that. No, that's not an invasion. You put troops on the ground, we can understand that, right? Invasion through cyberspace, come back in 240 years.
They were dealing with pen and quill in 1787. They didn't understand that there would be something like computers developed. They didn't understand that there could be massive misinformation or selective release of information such as there was through WikiLeaks during the 2016 election. So all these things happened. The framers couldn't have imagined that occurring, but they tried to anticipate it. The framers anticipated such things as greed and hunger for power. But both the United States Army and the United States Navy have commercials for recruitment in which they advertise about how they train for cyber attacks. So this is one of the most important areas of 21st century warfare. The occupant of the Oval Office or his agents acted in collusion with the Russians. Both the executive and the legislative branches were compromised in the 2016 elections. Now, our Constitution was written to protect our rights. There are three branches of our government. The executive branch, the head of which is the President of the United States, the legislative branch, comprised of the two houses of Congress, and the judicial branch, at the top of which is the United States Supreme Court. It is clear that Donald Trump neither has an interest in nor will allow an investigation into alleged wrongdoing committed by his own people. It is clear neither House of Congress will conduct a meaningful investigation. James Madison, called by some the father of the Constitution, wrote that instances where the executive and the legislative branches are compromised, then the judicial branch is the only competent branch to act in a crisis. The Supreme Court can appoint a person called a special master to conduct such an inquiry as would be conducted here. A petition for writ of mandamus soon will be filed with the United States Supreme Court. In that writ, it will be asked that a special master be appointed and that new elections be ordered if the evidence establishes Russia stole the 2016 elections. Our nation and our world face serious issues: racism, inequality, access to health care, possibility of war. All these issues pale when compared to the issue of the consequences to our nation and to the world if the 2016 elections were stolen and nothing is done. The petition is based on several reasons. In the run-up to the elections, the American people were led false information by Russians and those acting with the Russians. Higher-ups in Donald Trump's campaign met with Russians and altered the Republican Party platform, for one thing, in Russia's favor, then lied about any contacts. People relied upon these falsehoods or were misled by American citizens who actually were Russian agents to the detriment of our country. To make a material misstatement of fact one knows to be untrue, upon which another relies to that other person's detriment, is called fraud. Because fraud was perpetrated on the American people in this election, the election was void ab initio from its beginning. The right to vote is fundamental. If the evidence establishes that Russian oligarchs swung the election, then the integrity of the election process was compromised so severely, each of us lost the right to vote as if we'd been turned away at the polls when we showed up. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution was violated when we suffered a cyber invasion by the Russians. Cyber attacks such as these are amongst the most significant threats to America's national security.
Change the outcome. But I tell you, having worked in the CIA, if we had been caught interfering in European elections or Asian elections or anywhere in the world, those countries would call for new elections, and any democracy would. And I don't see it any other way.
Bob, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying we should have another election? How would that work? Is that plausible?
When a foreign country interferes in your election and the outcome is in doubt and the legitimacy of the government, I don't know how it worked constitutionally. I'm not a lawyer, constitutional lawyer. But I'm deeply disturbed by the fact that the Russians interfered.
People are afraid of chaos, that in the event that the election is declared to be invalid, that there could be chaos in this society because we will seek a revote and removal of the current occupant of the Oval Office from that office and a revote. It's actually the opposite. If by operation of law that individual is removed from the Oval Office and by processes of the law a replacement is elected, then that would not be chaos. That would be something that would be far more orderly than allowing somebody to assume the office of president, as a framers' Constitution we're afraid might happen one day. And that would be by operation of law, and that would not be chaos.
The people today makes me realize that because I'm 91, I was born witnessing, I was college age by then, And my college sent me to the United Nations, and I didn't realize what a privilege I had watching Eleanor Roosevelt and everybody else in the world. And so I think now I can say the chaos has been orchestrated. And who's been orchestrating it? If I don't know, and if none of us here know, I expect the Supreme Court to investigate and tell me. So I do expect the Supreme Court to find out what I need to know.
For everybody that's been active in the resistance, first of all, there's no such thing as false hope. There's just hope that doesn't pan out. I fought Walmart, and I fought City Hall. People told me, you can't fight City Hall, and you can't fight Walmart. Well, I fought them both here in Miami where I live, and we won. And you can win too. It's just a matter of effort and directing those efforts in a very smart way. And there's a lot of people doing that right now. And that's why I'm giving this message to ReVote 2017. This is your time.
I saw it on the TV late one night. War broke out, we were joining the fight. My head grew heavy and my heart stood still. The thought of the game, me one hell of a chill. I prayed for the soldiers as they left through the night, scared as can be, yet so ready to fight. Mark and Bob, Billy and Joe, it damn near killed me just to see them go. They all headed out to a foreign land, each boy carrying a gun in his hand. They fought for freedom across the shining sea. So many gave their lives just so we could see. America is the land of the free, and it's the best damn place in the world to be. America is the home of the brave. I feel so lucky for what they gave to me. Whoa, 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 what they gave to me. Yeah, we all grew up with dreams in our head, lessons to be learned, so much to be said. Told